You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
Welcome. You are listening to Watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Well, we got a great guest on today who's going to explore the ramifications of the Ukraine war to the U.S., Russia, and China, and to see what is going on there. Carl Delfeld, it's great to have you on, and you are... Well, you've been around, author of the book, Power Rivals, America and China's Superpower Struggle. You're an former Asia advisor to the U.S. Treasury and U.S. Joint Economic Committee. Great to have you on. So just briefly, tell us your take on Ukraine and how it has affected the balance of power in the world.
Very good to be with you. I think it's really interesting. Before Russia invaded Ukraine, remember he met with Xi Jinping, and I'm pretty sure Xi Jinping gave a green light or a yellow light for him to go ahead. Everybody was expecting a short conflict, and now it looks like it could be years. But I think China's the big beneficiary, even so, because number one, they got the U.S. and NATO tied down a bit with Ukraine. Just U.S. Washington here is definitely distracted by what's going on. Number two, we're seeing the U.S. and NATO stockpiles of armaments dwindle and again take priority over Asia. And number three, China already had a very strong a position of superiority regarding Russia. I mean, its economy is 10 times larger. Russia's 10 times larger than Ukraine. So you kind of get the picture. China now is going to be easily dominating Eurasia, meaning this whole big landmass from Asia stretching through Russia into Europe. The Eurasian landmass is going to be China's domain. And lastly, they're getting food and energy on the cheap from Russia. So they really win right across the board, in my view.
All right. But the question is, if China were to invade Taiwan, would it just be a pushover, or would it be a Ukraine for the Chinese? I mean, they've never invaded another country in modern history.
Yeah.
And Tibet, and
right.
Okay there, but there was no army or anything. They've got 9 hours basically taking ships from China to Taiwan, and air defenses, all these things. Taiwan's been stocking up on weapons. Would it just be a walk in the park, or would they be greeted as saviors by the Taiwanese people?
Well, Taiwan's a very tricky situation because if they physically wanted to take Taiwan, they could take Taiwan, but they certainly don't want a Taiwan that is smoldering and with Taiwan semiconductor destroyed and faced with the situation of financial sanctions from the West, all that could be devastating. So militarily, they definitely could do it. I mean, their military spending now is on an annual basis 5 times that of Japan, 25 times that of Taiwan, which really has not done a very good job of arming itself. Protecting itself. So they could do it. But I think we have to just let it unfold a little bit. And then regarding the U.S., how quickly could the U.S. react? I mean, there's not a lot of hard assets east of the international date line. So China's only 100 miles away from Taiwan, from the mainland, where Taiwan is 8,000 miles from where I sit in Washington, 6,000 miles from California, 1,700 miles from Guam. So it's not like we're positioned to react quickly. And then China has like 1,300 ballistic and cruise missiles aimed at Taiwan. They've got 39 air bases within 500 miles of Taiwan. So, China is a superpower in Asia already to a great degree. So the question is, they would pay a heavy price. So I'm sure there's hawks within China that are pressing to move ahead, and it's very hard to say how things turn out. I think the key thing is early next year there's going to be a presidential election in Taiwan, and that could be an inflection point, but it's very hard to tell. But definitely Ukraine's not a positive for the U.S. like some people try to spin it, like we're kind of fighting China in Ukraine. I get it, but I think it's a bigger win for China.
All right, for now. But China's got its own particular set of challenges, right?
Oh, definitely.
The real estate market has died, and the savings basically of the entire population. When I was there, I guess it was about 7-8 years ago, I was talking with a gentleman who had a very successful manufactured goods sourcing business to merchants around the world.
Right.
I said, where are you putting your money? And he said, real estate.
Yes.
I said, but your government's been telling you to put money into gold. No. Now, him is in a second-tier city, Yiwu. But I presume that his situation was similar to those of many others. The other thing was debt. He bought a BMW, the 3 Series. We hear would go for $50,000. Bought it for $100,000+, and just write a check. He borrowed money. It used to be the Chinese were, like Ben Franklin, never a lender or a borrower bee, but they're all debtors. I mean, they've taken on all the worst attributes of Western civilization here, Western society.
Don't just survive, thrive. The Financial Survival Network.
Osino Resources is a Ross Beatty-backed gold exploration company in mining-friendly Namibia. Osino's district-scale land package is situated near 2 producing gold mines, one of which Osino's management team previously developed and sold to B2 Gold. Osino's founders and management are experienced mining professionals who have already successfully developed and sold 2 companies in the past 7 years. Osino has an excellent shareholder base with Ross Beatty owning 20%, insiders 5%, and resource capital funds 8%. This is an exploration company with drills turning that you'll definitely want to pay attention to. Osino trades in New York under the ticker OSIIF and in Toronto under the ticker OSI. To learn more, go to osinoresources.com. That's osinoresources.com.
This is the Financial Survival Network, the information you need to thrive now more than ever.
Yep. Well, China does definitely have their vulnerabilities. They're a big food and energy importer, and a lot of that moves through the Straits of Malacca, coming from the Middle East through Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore, through the South China Sea. So definitely that's one. And then the high-end semiconductors. But the debt is an issue, like it is here, by the way, but we're more developed and can cope with it better. But the Chinese definitely have a property and debt issue. And then the state-owned enterprises have been more successful than a lot of people thought, but they still dominate China and have a lot of debt and low profitability as well. But then, so that's why this U.S.-China rivalry is so fascinating, because we can go back and forth on almost any issue. Like, for example, U.S. in debt, the Chinese see us as distracted and in decline. And our job is to reverse that view. But we have a lot of debt too. I mean, we've added $10 trillion to the national debt in the last 5 years, and China's watching that. So,
yeah. But during the time we was inflated our money supply,
right,
base rates gone up. At the same time, China, inflated their money supply by tenfold.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I mean, they invented inflation. When we go back to Marco Polo, he was intrigued because they were using paper money,
right?
Chinese, and then he watched inflation occur, and they called it flying money because it literally, no sooner you got it into your hand and it flew out.
Yeah.
So, it looks like we're into another phase. And what's interesting is that the ability for this game to continue is going to is going to end at some point. As these inflationary waves generally don't end well.
Right. And the Chinese have been keeping their currency cheap, which is why they continue to run up these huge trade surpluses versus the U.S. I don't know if you saw it, but for last year, I mean, nothing's changed. They have about a $350 billion a year surplus. And part of that is the strong dollar and the weak Chinese currency. But you highlight basically what is another weakness in China, and that is they're vulnerable to capital flight. I mean, if you really let private people, in China move their money where they want it to move it, definitely you'd see huge amounts of capital flight to the West. But they really, that's the advantage they have is that they really control their financial system, whereas ours is, more market oriented, which we believe in, but it can lead to upheaval as well.
Yeah, and chaos. But free markets kind of a thing of the past.
Yes.
Nobody believes in them anymore except us intellectuals, because we know from history and from just the experience, the American experiment, that when markets are their most free, everyone benefits. But we don't need to go there. So odds of China attacking Taiwan, what are we looking at?
Well, my personal view is next year, in the next 2 years, I would say my probability is 30, between 30 and 40%.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's not, that's less than 50.
Right.
Got to come down to a cost benefit analysis, or perhaps the whole Taiwan thing is just a big distraction. And while we're watching this hand, the other hand is reaching in our pocket, picking our pocket, taking our wallet.
Yes.
Hey, so China, like you said, not as used to managing disaster in the economy, meltdowns, markets blowing up, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You certainly can't discount the progress they've made over the past 20, 30 years, but a lot of that has come by the export of inflation from the West, especially the U.S. But every country in the West, every first world country has exported their inflation to China and the developing world. And how long can the game continue?
Well, when you look at China, I mean, you have to consider, first of all, they're, a trading superpower. They're the biggest trader by far. Even our neighbors to the south in South America, they're the biggest trader with them. And a lot of the countries say we were the biggest trader. China has replaced us. And they're also a big manufacturer. 20 years ago, the U.S. manufactured more than China. Now China manufactures twice as what the U.S. So we kind of moved our industrial base, a big part of it, to China, and that's where it is. Apple assembles 90% of their products there. So China has its strengths. I think the biggest mistake the U.S. would make is to become complacent and not take this challenge seriously, because we're definitely the world superpower, but it's going to be a struggle to keep it, and China's struggling to become one. And they have just had this window, I call it the decade of vulnerability and opportunity for both China and the U.S. 2020 to 2030, I think, is going to be a decisive decade, because after 2030, Chinese demographics really turn pretty bleak. So I think the leadership sees the next 6-7 years as their opportunity to really move up, and the U.S. has to be aware of that. We really need to have really smart diplomacy, and not overreact, but take this challenge really seriously.
Sure. No, agreed. Well, we really appreciate you coming on, Carl.
Thank you.
To find out more about you, get your book, where is the best place to go?
Best place is Amazon, Power Rivals.
Right. No rival. And we appreciate, again, coming on. If anyone has a question for Carl or myself, shoot me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. Link to Carl's book is in the show notes of this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Make sure you sign up for your free newsletter. Carl, I'm sure we'll be talking to you again soon as things unfold. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Thank you, Kerry.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.